Hi everyone, welcome to the next Pantheon Thames Paediatric Wellbeing Hub webinar. This one is called How Do We Relax and Recharge? And we'll be talking today about how you take a break in this time that we're in the middle, which feels a bit like limbo and a bit like not knowing what happens next, and thinking about how we might look after ourselves. So I want to start where we are and think very carefully about what this presentation is going to be about, and start by saying that I'm attempting in no way to be preachy about this. None of us are perfect, least of all me. So whilst I'm talking about taking a break, relaxing and recharging, I'm recording this video on a Saturday night after I put my children to bed. And I realise that that's not ideal. It would be good if I was recording this during my work day and the time that I was paid to work. But that hasn't been possible this week. So I need you to know that I'm not telling you this without understanding the challenges that you face just in order to do some of the things I'm asking you to do. I think we do our best a lot of the time. Particularly, we have done a great deal in the last few months, and we have to remember that good enough is good enough. So I am working on a Saturday night when I'd rather not be, but I will be taking 2 weeks of annual leave in a couple of weeks, and I think that's good enough for now. And I'm thinking about the ways that I look after myself. When I finish this, I will have an evening off. And I think it's really easy, if you imagine that we've got these two little voices in our ears, a bit like those of you who are old enough to know Tom and Jerry. They used to have a devil and an angel on their shoulders in Tom and Jerry quite often, and one of them would say, don't do that, and the other one would say, yes, go and, I don't know, whatever it was, pull the tail of the cat. And I think we have these critical and compassionate voices. They're the same. And our critical voice can sometimes be critical. We're not doing a good enough job. We should work harder. We should try more. And I think it'd be possible for this that I'm talking about looking after ourselves, to become another thing for us to beat ourselves up about. And now I'm not even looking after myself. And I think we now have to think about how we not only kind of increase the compassionate voice and think about how we do care for ourselves, but also turn down the critical voice when it's saying you're not doing enough and you're not doing good enough, and you should be doing better at all of this. And I'm going to talk about some ways I hope that will help you to think about how you might increase your compassionate voice and think about yourself, but I'm recognising the challenges that are there as well. So this is what I'm going to cover today, just 3 main things. 1, why it's hard to stop and take a break. 2, why it might be important to do that. And 3, then how we might do that. And recognising that all of those will involve some thinking about. So I'm going to start by thinking about why we might need to take a break. We started doing these wellbeing webinars because we recognised that there was a need to be thinking about staff, the paediatric staff that we all work with, and recognising that life is harder at the moment for staff working in hospitals. And now we come to the point where we're in the summer. Traditionally, people might be taking holiday, or you might have had a holiday plan that got cancelled earlier on in the year. And also in that funny time where we don't know what's going to happen in the autumn and the winter, but we have a sense that we're worried about that, we're nervous about that, and potentially quite frightened about what might happen next. And at least knowing that there will be new challenges coming up in the winter, because the winter is always a challenging time for us in terms of children or adults coming into hospital. So I think with that in mind, there are some challenges to think about. How do we relax and recharge in this time? And I think these might be some of the common things that people might be experiencing at this time. I can't stop and relax because I'm needed too much in my team or my ward. We need to prepare now for the winter. We need to be thinking about that. We need to get up and running. I can't take a break because other people are still working. So that either I don't want to do that for my colleagues, or it would look bad, or it wouldn't be fair. I'm nervous because what might happen if I stop? Given what the last few months have been like, what might go on in my head if that happens? And there's no point stopping because I can't relax anyway. Possibly there's no point stopping because I can't do what I wanted to do. I can't go where I wanted to go, or I can't see the people I was hoping for. I can't enjoy the things that I would normally enjoy on a holiday. And I think those are the reasons that maybe it's very difficult to take annual leave at the moment, or if you're taking annual leave, it's quite difficult to use it, and you might end up, as I have done earlier in the year, working on my annual leave days because they felt like there was just too much to do. And I think we could still be stuck in that place very much. So I'm going to talk about it. If you've seen some of my other webinars, this might be familiar to you, but I think it's quite relevant to where we are now. So when I work a lot with children in my role, both at St George's and elsewhere, and I talk to them about how we have this system in our brain that's a bit like how an alarm goes off when we burn toast. So in my house, if I burn toast, my smoke alarm goes off, and it doesn't just go off in one room. They're wired, so all of the smoke alarms in the house go off, and there's this awful noise going, boo, 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 there's real danger. And anxiety is like that too. So there's this kind of waft of something going on, and our alarm can go off, our brain can get set. And it's like an inbuilt mechanism. It's really helpful. If you were standing in the middle of the main road and a bus was coming towards you, that alarm is really helpful. That's the alarm that gets you out of the way. And it's evolutionarily designed. We have that alarm because when humans first evolved, we needed to know just by the flicker of movement in the trees over there that there might be danger over there, there might be a tiger, and we needed to set that alarm going off. And then normally, what happens is maybe the flicker we work out, oh, it was just a bird, and our alarm kind of that resets itself. The problem with coronavirus has been that we can't always see the danger, and we've been on constant high alert. And I think in paediatrics, that's really quite tangible, because that's been, am I going to be redeployed? Am I not going to be redeployed? If I am, what skills will I be needed to use? Where will I be sent? Will I be with the same team? And then you may have been redeployed, in which case there's that, this is all a bit new to me, or you may have been back in you may have been working in your original place, but in quite different circumstances, possibly different people, possibly having to work from home a lot of the time. And so we've been on high alert for a long time. Since March, we've been on high alert. And the real science behind that, so we talk about it like it's a smoke alarm going off, but this is the pathway that's happening. And we did talk about this when we were talking about, if you've watched the last webinar that I did, which was about what happens with children. This is the same pathway, adults or children, that we get this alert in our brain, a shot of adrenaline goes on, we're in the fight or flight reaction, and there's lots of physiological things that happen. We breathe faster, our heart beats faster, a whole load of chemicals are coursing around our body. That's what happens when we're on high alert. But I also showed this one before, and I'm showing it again because it's really important in the context of taking a break. This is that there are two pathways. So on the right hand side, you can see the pathway, that's the acute one, that fight or flight one I've been talking about. But we also have the chronic stress pathway, the one that if we're under pressure for a long time, that's the pathway that gets activated. And all of us, I think, will have been working with both of these quite a lot of the time over the last few months. So some real danger happens. Somebody's rushed in that we're very worried about, or we get deployed somewhere else very quickly, or we're asked to do something that we don't feel we can do. Probably our acute pathway is going on. But just working in health services for the last few months, coping with everything, all the changes we've been coping with, all the new rules, all the thinking about PPE, all the other challenges in our life, like getting food and looking after our children and all of those other things, mean that we're probably using the other pathway as well. So here we are, having had two massive things being triggered in our bodies, both which release a whole bunch of different chemicals. They're all coursing around us. And here we are now at this point where things are calmer and a bit more settled. And some of the normal work that we would have been doing pre-coronavirus is happening, but some of that's still quite challenging. And there we are left with these bodies that have been on this hyper alert state for a long time. And cortisol, which is the chemical that you will see in this pathway on the left, is kind of pumping around us. Cortisol does loads of things. It's really helpful if you're under chronic stress. If you need to be kind of paying more attention, remembering the key things more, how do I put on my PPE? How do I contact those people in this situation? So it does all of these things. It gets more blood, more sugar in our blood. That's really helpful. Increases our blood pressure. We're all kind of pumping to go. Decreases our sensitivity to pain. That'd be helpful if you're fighting a tiger. But it also leaves us in a less comfortable position when that's pumping around us. And these are the things that cortisol does. It changes loads of things. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've definitely been more grumpy in the last few months than I might have been otherwise. Not to say I didn't get grumpy pre-coronavirus, but I think I've noticed my irritability is higher, particularly if I'm tired. I have less ability to regulate that than I might have done. Particularly at the beginning of all of this, I couldn't really tolerate people talking about anything else because I was so focused on what I was thinking about around coronavirus, how the services would manage, what I needed to do around that. And this leaves us pretty exhausted. Your body has been like kind of on the go, and that can be quite draining for us. So let's think about what we might do first that might reduce that. None of these things will come as a big surprise to you, I don't suppose. If we're going to reduce the cortisol that's pumping around us, we need to lower stress. And I put that top because look at the two things that are there. One is remove yourself from the stressful situation. And that might be taking some annual leave. And that's one of the reasons we're doing this. Sometimes we do need a break. We need to step out of the situation. Even if we're stepping out of work and into a home life where we might be quite busy too, we might have caring responsibilities, just removing ourselves from the situation that's been making us on high alert might be quite helpful. And also learning some techniques. And some of our webinars have been talking about that. And we're going to include some of this in future webinars as well. Then eating well, I mean, again, that's a no-brainer. Lots of water, reducing our sugars, eat fibre. I did read something somewhere, but I can't check this out, so I can't tell you scientifically, that dark chocolate was really good for that. And I'm really grateful because I've been eating quite a lot of chocolate over this, so I'm really hoping that's helped my cortisol levels. Sleeping well. Again, it makes complete sense, doesn't it? But the evidence base says that health workers have been sleeping worse through the crisis that we've been through. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was difficult for you. And actually, some of the things that might help us sleep better are reduced when we're under high stress. So, our brain can't shut down in the same way it could. Some of the chemicals that help us to sleep might not be going in the same way. And then finding ways to relax is another thing that reduces cortisol. Relaxing techniques, doing things we enjoy, having a laugh, having some fun. Again, we might be able to do those things if we were using some of our leave, but that might be quite difficult. And it particularly might have been quite difficult over the last few months because lots of the ways we might traditionally relax, seeing friends, going to the gym, going out to the pub maybe, having a coffee, we might not have been able to do. And then some of the things we might do at home anyway, reading a book perhaps, or sitting watching the telly, maybe we can't do that as much because either we're working more or our kids are home. So it's been more difficult to do the things that we might have done, which is why our cortisol might have stayed higher. So like I said at the beginning of this slide, none of those will be a surprise. All of those have been harder. But now, if we're raising our compassionate voice, then we need to be thinking about how do we do some of these things, because too much cortisol for too long doesn't do us any favours, and we could really do with reducing our levels right now. I really like the Awkward Yeti cartoons. I think they're very on the ball and also quite funny quite a lot of the time. And I think when I was talking to my daughter today about what's been happening over the last few months and how it might have affected her, she actually has loved being in key worker school much more than normal school. There's been less kids there, they've done more fun stuff, they've done work, she's been with kids of other years, they've done different kinds of work which she's thought has been more fun. I think they've made it more entertaining, and they've done more kind of crafty activities than they might normally do. So she has been really able to say, look at all the good, there's this virus around which is not very nice and it's rubbish that I can't see my friends, but look at all the good things. And I think children naturally do that some of the time, and I was really pleased that she was able to do that. I think it's been really easy, particularly for those of us who work in hospitals or who run other frontline roles, to focus on what's difficult, because there are a lot of really difficult things. There have been some really awful things happening and some very challenging things and some things that have changed the way we might normally work. So it's been easy to focus on the bad stuff. And when we are in a state of heightened alert, like those pathways I just showed you, our brain focuses on the things it feels it needs to, because that's the survival mechanism. If you see movement in the trees, if you're a newly evolved human, you need to focus on that. It doesn't matter that there's beautiful flowers over here or some food. If you don't focus on that, then that might be a tiger and it might come and eat you. So focusing on the bad is part of the way our brain is designed. It's not a choice, but it's why, like I said at the beginning of all of this, I was there thinking, I can't believe anybody else can even talk about anything other than coronavirus, because it was all I could think about. The focusing on it was quite adaptive at the time, but can be now is the time when we need to start shifting away from that. So you may find that you're feeling you can't relax. And in the context of what I've been saying, that makes quite a lot of sense. We're so busy doing, and we've been focusing on our job, on our family, on our basic needs. Just getting food for yourself or for your family was difficult. Just getting safely to work might have been more difficult than normal. And we get used to running in this way where we're kind of on hyper alert all of the time. And our processing capacity is limited, like I said, because we're just focusing on one thing. It can be difficult to think about other things. It can be difficult to concentrate on something else, which might mean it's difficult to do the things like read a book or watch the telly or anything that normally calms you down. It might be difficult to do that. In normal times, in non-corona times, I quite like to go for walks, and often I would drop my children at school and then go for a walk before I would start work in the morning. And I haven't done very much. I have walked a lot with my family, but I haven't done very much of that walking on my own in order to process and think. And there hasn't been that much time to do that. But even if there had, I think the kind of thinking, right, I need to do this, I need to get out and do this, I haven't even had the capacity to think about that. One of the other things I've noticed is that I would normally cook most of the meals during the week for the family, and during the midst of this I've cooked virtually none of the meals in our house, and my husband, who's been wonderful, has really stepped up and has done that. And it's not that I've lost the ability to cook, but the ability to think, what ingredients do we have, what do everybody in my family like, how could I throw that together, what could I make out of that. I just haven't had that ability to think about those things and put those pieces of knowledge together. My processing capacity has been much more limited. I've noticed in the last week that I've cooked all the meals again this week. That's the first week since mid-March that I've cooked all the meals in a week, and it's because I've got more processing space now and more capacity to think beyond, these are the things I need to do to look after my family, and these are the things I need to do for work. But it's very hard to kind of open that out when we've been used to working in that way. So let's think about why we should relax. Well, for a start, we can't do for a prolonged period. Something has to give. We have to have a break, because we can't keep up that level of energy and focus for such a long time. Something's going to give. And there are other parts of our life that are really important too. The part that's about us, that's not about us the professional, just us as the person. Or it might be our family, or it might be the other people who are important in our life, or it might be the other things that we like to do. There are other things that are important other than work, and now is the time to be starting to find them. And really, if those aren't compelling enough arguments, then just the argument that you can't pour from an empty cup. When you work in any kind of caring role, whether you're a nurse or a doctor or a psychologist or a teacher or anything like that, you're pouring out all the time. You're looking after other people. You're pouring cups of tea. And eventually, your pot's going to run out. It's going to be empty. You can't continue to care and have empathy and support and tolerance and patience and all of those things if your pot is empty. And at some point we have to refill our pot. Even if we knew what was going to happen in the winter, we would need to do that, but even more so because we don't know what we're facing next. We've got to recharge that pot, ready for the next whatever it is, whether it's work as normal, whether things start to get better, whether they get more difficult. We can't pour from an empty pot, and we've got to refill in order to be able to do our jobs. Okay, so the next section is what do I do? Okay, given those facts, it might be quite hard to take annual leave, to relax if I am on leave, to look after myself. What can I do? If you've watched any of my other webinars, you'll know I really like Charlie McKeesy. This quote is from him. I think he's really captured the mood. He wrote his book pre-coronavirus, but he's been doing more since. And I think this idea that it might feel sometimes like we're out of our depth, like this is too much. And I think if you're going to take anything from this, it would be that just breathe and hold on. We're going to get there. And these are some of the ways that might help you to do that. So let's talk about starting small, okay? There are lots and lots of things we can do. But the first things we can do is that whatever else you don't have time for, you may have a lot of things going on in your life. Work may still be very busy for you or feel very full on. There may be a lot of things to catch up with or pressure of waiting lists, or lots of people needing you at home or at work, but you do have time to breathe, both all of the time. I realise we breathe all of the time, but I mean breathing, okay, I'm just going to take a breath. We know that regulates. If you think about those pathways I showed you earlier, and I said that there's physiological arousal, our hearts are beating faster, we're breathing faster, we're having all this adrenaline coursing around us. Just breathing starts to slow our heart rate. So we can do that all of the time. It's really good for regulating us. But sometimes, And it might be while you're sitting on the loo, or while you're going to the cupboard to get something out, or whilst you're cooking in the kitchen, that you can do a few more mindful breaths where you're breathing in and you're breathing out. And if you can make the out breath longer than the in breath, then you're just starting to just bring it down, to calm down a little bit. And you'll notice I talk really fast. I've always talked like that, but even doing that helps me to slow down as well. It's Saturday night now. I can just calm down, take a breath and slow down. And you do have time. The other thing that you have time, whatever is going on for you, is to acknowledge how you're feeling. Because if you're interested to know more about this, watch the first webinar that I did, which I think is called Getting Through It. But this is something that's your first step. If it feels like anything else is too difficult at the moment, then what you do have time to do is say, this is how I'm feeling right now. Right now I'm feeling pretty stressed, or I feel really drained and tearful, or now we're not so busy, I just feel exhausted. Whatever it is, just naming that. And that, for now, it might feel like that's all you can do, but that's a really good first step. And if you have got any leave booked and you're finding it really hard either to take it, or when you do take it, to relax, start with these things. Start with the breathing and start with looking, what is it that I'm feeling? What is going on? What's that feeling for me when I'm feeling really stressed? I feel it here in my chest, this kind of feeling like I want to cry, even if I'm not about to cry, this kind of choked up tears somewhere here. And just when I notice that, what I say to myself is, what's that about? What's the thing that's put that there for me today? And I run through the things that I've been thinking, oh yeah, it was that comment that somebody made to me. Or, oh, it was the fact that I didn't manage to do that and I feel awful about it. Or, oh yeah, it's the fact that I've still got all of those things to do, or I'm feeling really nervous about that thing I'm doing in the future. So even noticing that is a really helpful first step. And then what next? So that might be okay for you. It might feel like the next thing. So the next thing is allow yourself to relax. So if you can, take a day off or a week off. Take your time that you're owed to take off, because now is really the time to use that. And then when you do that, find something that is relaxing. Watching TV, sitting in the park, going for a walk, calling your friends. Just a 5-minute sit down if that's all you can manage, but some time that you can just relax. And then you might do some of that breathing, or you might just veg out and do nothing. But allowing yourself to do that, knowing that you've worked hard and you deserve this, allowing your compassionate voice to say, this is okay, it's okay to have this time, it's okay to sit down for a few minutes, it's okay to watch mindless TV, it's okay to watch something and really enjoy it, it's okay to sit it and not pay attention to it at all. Allow yourself sometimes to leave the chores for another day. There is work that won't be awful if you leave it for another day. If it's Friday and you really should go home, leave it for another day. If there's hoovering that needs to be done and you could leave it for another day. And again, that's your compassionate voice. Your critical voice will be saying, I can't believe you've left your house unhoovered for another day. And your compassionate voice is going to say, that's okay. Actually, you've done enough. Good enough is good enough. Now, I've mentioned this a couple of times, and I know it's really hard for people to take annual leave at the moment. It might be because what you wanted to do, you couldn't do anyway. But I would really encourage you, if you feel able to take some annual leave, particularly if you've missed some over the last few months. You might have had some planned around Easter time, around May, any of those leave that you've had planned, or even the odd day here and there that you didn't take. Please try and take some in this time. And even if you can't go away, think about having some leave and how you might use that in a way that feels good enough. It might not be the perfect holiday that you'd hoped for, but just something that might be enough for you. And do say to yourself that you've done a good job and you deserve a rest. And none of us is perfect. None of us have done a perfect job over this, but we have done a good job and you've done good enough. And now you deserve a rest or a treat. And if you find that you're trying to do that and you find you can't relax, the first thing I'd encourage you to think about is that relaxation is not something you can just do. Quite often when I'm working with people and I ask them to do a breathing exercise or some mindfulness or something that's relaxing, and they come back and say, it didn't work, I didn't feel relaxed at all. And I think back to the first time, a very long time ago, when I was an undergraduate at university, and I can remember I was really stressed, someone doing a relaxation exercise with me and me saying, it didn't make me any more calm, I just feel like I'm more stressed now, it just really stressed me out lying down on a mat and thinking about all this stuff. It's a skill. It's a skill like learning to play football, learning to ride a bike, learning to type. Those are skills, and you don't get good at them the first time you do them. You do get good at them if you practice them. And so if you can't relax, don't expect that you're going to be able to do it straight away. It takes practice. But if you're feeling quite stressed and you find you can't relax, start by just grounding yourself. And what I mean by that is really like, okay, I'm sitting down, I can feel the chair underneath me, I can feel the floor, I've got bare feet, so I can feel the carpet under my feet, I can feel my hair, I can feel my clothes. Really ground yourself solidly in what's there, what you can feel, what you can see, what you can hear. Just, right, this is where I am right now. Doesn't have to be anything clever, just what's straight ahead of you, what's either side of you, what can you hear? I can hear the sound of cars, I can hear the fan on my computer going. Just really try and ground yourself in where you are right now. That's a really good start. You can try a mindfulness activity, and I put apps in brackets there because there are loads of really good apps that will help you if you find that that's helpful. So a couple of the apps that I would recommend, there's one called Headspace, which some of it is free. There is a paid version of that, but there is some that's free. So I would recommend getting that if you need some help with that. There's also one called My Life, which used to be called Stop, Think, Breathe. I'm just going to show you the icon for this one. So this is the icon for My Life. This is the icon for Headspace. Those ones are both really good apps. My Life has loads of free content. It's got content for children, content for adult content, lots of different types of content. And there's also a beautiful thing on My Life where you can rate how you're feeling and it will suggest some mindfulness activities for you. Now, I find those helpful because although I know loads of mindfulness activities and would often use them when I was working with people, I find if I'm trying to mindfulness myself, I can't be both telling myself what to do and doing it at the same time. And that's where the apps can be really helpful. You just put a set of headphones in, do one maybe in the morning, maybe when you've got 5 minutes, maybe before bed. I find if I do them before bed, I fall asleep, but that isn't always a bad thing. We also know that things like being outside in nature is really good for us, just seeing things. So if there's somewhere you can go that has a bit of green, some grass and some trees, go there. If you can get right out into nature, brilliant. Do some yoga if that's your thing. There's loads of yoga on YouTube that you can do, or some sort of other physical activity. Physical activity and yoga, walking are really good because one of the things they do is kind of break down the cortisol in our body. Exercise is really good for that. So you've got loads of cortisol pumping around, you're quite stressed, then you want to break it down. Adrenaline breaks down by itself in the body, but cortisol needs a bit of help to do that. And activity is one of the things that does that. One of the other things you can do is you can notice good things. So what is going well? If you remember that cartoon I showed you a minute ago, the awkward Yeti one with the brain looking at the bad thing and the heart looking at the good things. So notice the good things that are happening right now. So it's really nice and sunny. We're allowed to see some of our friends now. I've noticed that everybody is being really supportive of each other. Whatever it is, notice the good things that are happening. Writing stuff down, it's a really good way to brain dump and it helps our brain to process. When we've been going through a lot, our brain gets a bit overwhelmed and kind of thinks, oh, I can't process all this incoming information. The last few months have been like that. And Westminster briefings every night. That's a lot of information coming in. Then I don't know about you, but our trust have had daily trust briefings coming in, the amount of emails, WhatsApp, texts that are coming in. There's been so much to process that our brain won't process it all. So write it down. I've been keeping a journal through since March because I've been finding my brain has been so full I've needed to put it somewhere, and I found that really helpful. And now that we're coming to a different phase of this, I'm finding that I'm looking back and going, oh, first time this week that I've been able to cook for my family for a whole week. So writing it down has helped me to kind of get some of that stuff out there. And then if you're really finding it hard to relax, there are places that you can talk to that will help with that. So you might have an in-house in your hospital or in your service, staff support service, use them. What's great about them is they understand your context very well. So find out about them and use them. The NHS nationally has loads of really good support services. And if you just Google that, if you look up NHS people, you'll find them. There's a line, a bereavement line, if you've been bereaved and that's kind of something that's really bothering you, that might be stopping you feeling able to relax. Or it might be just that you want to talk about what you've been through or how life is for you at the moment. There are lots of charities like Mind have a really good helpline. So use those kinds of things to talk to somebody. Lots of those are anonymous. And quite often even the in-house staff support is confidential and separate from any other work processes. They won't be talking to your manager about it. So do talk to somebody if it feels like you need to get it out there and you need somebody to kind of give you a bit of a sanity check or just a kind of somebody to bounce things off. And then treat yourself. Do the things that you enjoy, because you deserve it. And this is your compassionate voice saying it's okay to treat yourself from time to time. So time off might be a treat. It might not feel like a treat at the moment. If time off means being home with your family who are doing your head in, or if home is not a very nice place for you, then you might want to treat yourself in another way. It might be, you know, escaping in your head, planning your dream holiday, even if you can't go on it this year, or planning your dream house, planning your dream party, whatever it is. Even if it's just for fun, just giving your head a bit of escapism. It might be getting an early night, cooking your favourite food, getting a takeaway, reading a book, having a cup of tea and going back to bed. Whatever it is, find ways that little things that treat yourself. Have half an hour extra where you do something that you wouldn't normally do. I'm going to end with this. This I've put in a couple of my webinars. I think it's really sensible advice. And when I've been talking about this before, I've been talking about it in the context of our roles and what we might be doing, what we might be facing at work. Today I've put this in here because I want you to think about how these three things can be applied to yourself. And it links to what I've been saying about this compassionate voice on our shoulders. So keep calm. You know, think about the ways that you get calm. And I've talked about some of them today, and then how you kind of keep it steady for yourself, because that's really good for us. And then stay wise, and by wise I mean thinking about what might be helpful to you. So if you remember that slide about thinking about cortisol, eating well, sleeping well, those kind of things that are, you know, just wise decisions, getting enough exercise might be the things that really help you to stay wise. And then the be kind. So again, this is about how you look after yourself. How are you kind to yourself now? You've worked hard. And now how can you look after yourself? And be kind and take a break, and think about the ways that you might be able to use that break to look after yourself. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and I do hope you're looking after yourself and that you find time to relax and recharge over the next few weeks. And take care. Bye-bye.